Okay, loss of self. Let's solve it. When I first heard the concept, it was a young lady said to me, I don't even know who I am. I was mystified. I was blown away. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm like, check the ID in your purse. Like, what do you mean you don't know who you are? That to me sounded like some movie concept of like Born Identity or something where you just wake up and you're just like, who am I? And you find out you have all these special skills, right? But there's a quote that's used in movies often by Alan Moore where he says, you wear a mask for so long, you forget who you were beneath it. And that is how a complex trauma survivor feels. Because they're so busy wearing masks, that is, trying to please others, shape-shifting and being a chameleon to situations, trying to appease, trying to be nice, trying to be pleasing, that they lose track of what they are when they're not trying to be something else. They lose track of how they truly feel because they're so worried about how everyone else feels. They lose track of what they truly think because they're worried about what everyone else thinks. And they've compromised themselves so many times that it's gotten to the point where they've lost track of what even is the real them. And so they end up with what is essentially an existential crisis, not knowing who you are, being left with the question, who am I really? And so to solve this crisis, we need to understand what has actually been lost. Trauma is a violation of the self. When you try to define what trauma is, it's not something that happens to you, because the same thing can happen to two people and one person's traumatized by it and the other's not. Right? So two people can get slapped in the face and one person can be like totally shaken up and traumatized. The other person can literally be 3 minutes later still talking back, going and doing whatever it is they want. They feel in no way compromised by what has happened. So it's not the event that is the trauma. The trauma is how you are processing the event. So trauma to you is unique to you. So trauma in itself is a violation of the self. It's a violation of your values. The values are the self, by the way. It's a violation of your boundaries. It's a violation of what you hold dear and true and valuable. It's a violation or a constriction or an oppression of the self. That's what trauma is. So when you realize that that's what trauma is, then you realize why a trauma survivor has a loss of self, because they're constantly trying to back the self up, back the self up, back the self up to avoid another trauma. But in itself, they're re-traumatizing themselves in these micro traumas of compromising and oppressing and constricting the self, so that they end up with this crisis of not knowing what the self is anymore. In psychology, the self is referred to as the ego. The ego is something we need in order to be healthy. It's not a bad thing. So you need to preserve your ego. This is the thought self, the image you hold of who you are in your mind beyond the physical, but everything you believe in, everything you value, whether it's objects or people or concepts like love, friendship, loyalty, kindness, trust, safety. When those things are violated to you or in your world, that is a trauma. So trauma survivors live in such a state of fear of another violation, such a state of fear from trauma, that they're trying to avoid someone being mad at them or hating them, because they don't have a good sense of their core identity and who they are. They are looking to other people to confirm who they are. And that is a spiral that leads to loss of self. As soon as you are basing your self-worth on someone else's perception of you, it will lead you to the loss of self. And that's where many trauma survivors find themselves now, in a situation where they're leaning on and they've been looking to everyone else to confirm their worth and their value and their identity, and now they're lost on their own. Unless someone's given them some kind of affirmation, they got nothing. So they're feeling that sense of loss, that loss of self. But one thing you don't hear me talk about is the authentic self. And that's because I feel that the concept of the authentic self is very well-meaning, but it's a little bit misleading because it kind of implies that if you go back into your history, like at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, there was an authentic self and you have to get back to that person. I think that can be dangerous because when you were 4, 5, 6, or 7, you were not a complete person. So your goal in life now is not to get back to who you were before the trauma, who you were as a child, because who you were was still not complete. We as people are always growing, and we should be constantly upgrading our thoughts. Those of us who have a good sense of identity realize that our identity still does continue to change and grow. Our identity is still fluid. So each day, each year, each week, we are gathering more knowledge and information and wisdom so as to refine who we are, to become even better versions of ourselves. That's an ever-going process, right? So if you're going back to what you were, you don't even want to go back a year. You want to constantly be upgrading and refining your identity. So when we think about what was actually lost in childhood, it was not the identity that was lost in childhood. It was the acceptance you once had for who you are. That's what was lost. And so that's what they have right. So it's not about going back to the authentic self. It's going back to the authenticity and the actualization of being who you truly are, of knowing what you are, of accepting yourself, of loving yourself. Because when we're babies, we're born with a self-acceptance and a self-love. So that when we're hungry, we cry, right? When we're tired, we sleep or we start whining. When we need affection or need to burp or whatever it is we need, we shout out. And we expect the universe to provide. We expect caregivers to just step in and do something about it. And that's how you survive as a baby. As you start to grow, then you can start to refine yourself and become a little bit less selfish. But it's important to still maintain the core ego, which is I will do what I need to do to get my needs met. I will say what I need to say. I will speak up for myself. So those who come from a background of complex trauma, they have caregivers that are like prison wardens. They're beating down the prisoners. They're eroding the sense of self of their children. They're neglecting the child's emotional needs. Just simply a caregiver not smiling down at the baby when the baby's smiling up at the caregiver could cause a trauma. Just simply a caregiver not picking up a child and turning a blind eye to a child could cause a trauma. When you have a repeated pattern of that in childhood, you begin to get a sense from the outside world that you are not important, that your feelings are not important, and that your needs will not be met. And so now you need to get your needs met somehow. So what trauma survivors come up with in their childhood mind is, well, if I just sacrifice myself and stop being so selfish, maybe I can get some of these needs met. Maybe I can be loved. Maybe I can have connection. And so they actually sacrifice themselves. They start getting very quiet about what they want. They start becoming that chameleon. They start becoming that servant, that people pleaser, that personal chef, the personal maid, the comedian, the high achiever in school. to do anything and everything to get their parents to notice them in a positive way so that they can get some sort of affirmation because their soul is starving for affirmation of the self. This is a result of bad parenting. Yes, it's a maladaptation on the part of the child to decide to hate themselves rather than hate the parent, but it's a result of poor parenting, because how can you blame a child? It is a baby. So when the parenting is inadequate, the child feels that their needs need to be met somehow, and so they sacrifice the soul, or they murder the soul to become the ultimate appeaser of everyone else, and that's where you have that loss of self. So if loss of self really comes from pleasing others, then is finding yourself the result of disappointing others? Well, the answer is yes. You see, through safely being able to disappoint others in favor of yourself, you will actually find yourself. You won't feel that sense of loss of who you are. But the problem is, this unlocks a core fear for trauma survivors. Disappointing others, this is like, okay, anything else, forget it. I'll just live without an ego because I don't want to disappoint others. Well, you have to recognize, if you feel that way, is that is a trauma response. The reason why you're so afraid to disappoint others is because it wasn't safe in your household to disappoint your mom. It wasn't safe to disappoint your dad, your caregivers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandma, whoever it was that's supposed to be taking care of you. It wasn't safe for you. You felt that you would be neglected, you would be left behind, you would be abandoned, you would become invisible. That is absolutely traumatizing for a child. Or maybe you felt you were going to get beat, or they were going to get so angry that the situation was going to become scary. Please understand, it is a result of trauma that you are afraid now of disappointing others. But you must face that fear to beat that fear. You must confront that fear to overcome it. So how do you do that? You pick safe people and you start disappointing them. And it kind of sucks that people in your life now have to go through being disappointed like that. But you were supposed to get it in childhood. You're going to need to experiment now in adulthood to get what you didn't get then, which is the ability to experiment. And that is by trying out your ability to say no, knowing it's going to disappoint a person, and seeing what happens. And when you see that you are safe, it will reprogram your subconscious alarm system that's been trying to keep you safe, saying, no, don't disappoint anyone, don't disappoint anyone. It gets reprogrammed to realize, okay, it's safe to disappoint a person sometimes. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set a boundary and say, I don't want to, because I don't want to. No, thank you. I don't want to come. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to be able to do that. You have to start saying no. You have to start disappointing people if you don't want to lose yourself. Don't be afraid. You are an adult now. You're not a child. You are protected by laws and rights as a citizen. You can no longer be trampled upon and hurt and broken the way that you once were. And I know you're afraid of being neglected, you're afraid of being left, but if a person is going to leave you just because you disappointed them one time, then that person was never with you in the first place. That's not the type of person you want in your life. Let them go. Say no. And let the fakes go. If you want to know who you are, decide who you want to be. Is it that simple? Yes, you are whoever you say you are. Whatever you want to be, whenever you want to be it, you can be it when you decide to be it. When you decide to achieve it, when you decide to do it, then you are that person. If you're driving on your way to go protest something that you believe firmly in, then that's who you are, right? You're a protester. But in that moment, if you decide, oh, you know what? I could get arrested for being out there and protesting, and I don't want to risk that, lose my reputation, lose my job. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn around. I'm going to go back home where it's safe and find some other way to do this. Then that's who you are. In that one split second, that one decision changed who you were from, oh, that is a protester, to, no, that is just a law-abiding citizen going back to their apartment. That is a courageous person. That is a fearful person. In that instant, you change who you are. How? Through your choice, through your decision. You make the choice, you found yourself. You are whoever you say you are. So that's a simple example, right? But it's to show you that you can decide in a moment. So you can go with something that's bigger than that and change yourself in that moment into something that is whatever direction you want to go. To give you an example for myself personally, if I want to change something about myself, I just must decide to change it. In that moment, the moment that I make that decision, I am now on the road. Once I'm on that road, that's who I am. I'm that guy driving down that road. Just like when you were a protester and then all of a sudden you were just a law-abiding citizen going back home. Who you are is what road you're on, what direction you're going. The rest of the people on the outside will catch up to who you know you are. But who you are is who you are in your mind. It's who you intend to be. Your intentions, your motivations, your decisions dictate who you truly are. That's why someone else can't really judge you. Because if someone else tries to judge you, they're just judging a perception of you. They can't see your heart. They can't read your mind, so then they don't know your thoughts and they don't know your intentions. So now how can they really judge? Why would their opinion matter when they don't know who you truly are? So giving you an example with myself, if I want to change something about myself, I'm not someone, as a flaw, people have said I don't show a lot of respect for authority sometimes, right? So let's say I say, you know what, I want to change that about myself. I want to be someone who shows respect for authority. It's simple. Just in this moment, I can change that. I think about it and say, okay, I want to show respect for authority. I think about some examples in my mind of how I can do that. I think about myself talking to a police officer. Think about myself talking to a manager of a building. That is how I will act from now on. Bam! I am now a person who shows respect for authority. I am now on that road. You only know me by the past of what you've seen. Those are just your perceptions and images from the past. That's not who I really am, not anymore. You'll catch up when you start to see me do these things, when you start to see them manifest in my life and they make history later, but you don't know who I am, therefore I should not care what you think as comparison to how much I care what I think. I should not base my identity on your perception. And it's okay for people's perception to matter some to you, but that's not your true identity. Whatever their perception is not your actual true identity. Your true identity is your thoughts, your decisions. You are who you say you are. And so you need to sit down and assess who you want to be. Where do you want to go? And you will cure your loss of self. Because the moment you decide the direction you're going, I want to be a leader in the medical field. I want to be a thought leader in the health field. I want to be a writer. I want to be... Well, the moment you make that decision, you start moving towards it, that is who you are. And as long as you are continuing working on that, that is who you are. That is what you are. You are your wants, and your wants are your values. That is our identity. Our identity is our values, what we hold dear. Trauma is when the value gets violated. It's that simple. So who are you? Who do you want to be? That's the question. When I say who are you, do you know who you are? The question is, who do you want to be? That's what you ask yourself. Well, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And then you have your true identity. Get specific. One woman went to a psychologist. This was a story that happened to, I think his name is Alan Beck. He's a famous psychologist. But a woman went to him and said, I have this identity crisis. Like, I don't know who I am. And he got specific. He said, is there a specific situation in your life that's making you feel that way? And she talked about her college admission situation. She received 2 letters, and they were both letters of acceptance from 2 colleges she wanted to go to. One college was the college her mother attended. The other college is the one she really wished she could go to. Both accepted her, full ride, scholarship. She knew if she went to the college her mother attended, her mother would approve. But her mother might be quite disappointed if she told her she really wants to go to this other college. So, what should she do? Well, the psychologist told her, let's work this out. Let's think about this. And after talking about it, they came to the conclusion she should talk to her mom and express what she truly wanted. What she wanted. And she did. In the end, her mom was understanding. And she went on to go to the school that she wanted to go to. So on the next visit, the psychologist said, okay, how'd that turn out? Yeah, it's great now. I'm going to the school that I wanted to go to. I feel so much better. And the psychologist said, okay, great, but let's work on your identity issue. And she said, oh, I don't have that anymore. Just like that, the identity issue is solved by the specific situation that was challenging her identity. When we constrict the true self, what we want, then that trauma is what's creating the crisis. Get specific. What is it that you want that you feel like you can't have? Because that's what's making you feel like you don't know who you truly are. To be who you truly are, to find yourself, is to choose who you want to be, to do what you want to do. Is that clear? It helps when you know what your gifts are, right? Because some of the most confident people on the planet are athletes and people who know their talents, right? They know who they are. They walk with a certain swagger, this certain charisma, this certain confidence in them because they know their gift. They know who they are. So knowing your gifts is helpful. Your gifts are your strength. They're your abilities. They're your aptitudes. They're your talents. Well, what if you don't have any talents? I don't have any talents. I don't have anything that I'm good at, that I'm the best at. There's nothing that I'm special at. Well, remember, your gifts are your aptitudes and capacities also. It's what you have the capacity to learn. So you discover your gifts by delving more into your interests. That's where your gifts come from. Someone who's good at basketball, believe it or not, they didn't come out of the womb making slam dunks. They explored an interest. And they put time and work and effort into the interest. Kobe Bryant talks about how his father made it clear to him that what he needed to do was just to work harder, to just spend more time. He went to a camp in high school, a basketball camp in high school. He said he was the worst player in the camp. But then that summer, he worked harder than anyone else and continued to practice more hours. And he figured, hey, if I practice more than anyone else, I'll probably become better than everyone else. And guess what? It worked. Your strengths, your talents, your gifts are your choices. They're your interests that you put the time into to develop. This is proven by Laszlo Polgar, who had a theory. He was a Hungarian man with a theory that he could teach genius. That genius could be developed in a child if you just spent the time on some interest. And he proved it. The wife that he chose was someone that was on board with his experiment. He said he's going to do it with his own children. He's going to make his children into prodigies, into some form of discipline, some art, some sport, something. So what happened? Well, they started having their children, and the first child stumbled onto like a chess set or a chess book and showed an interest. And so Laszlo said, there it is. This is what we're going to do. It's going to be chess. My children will become chess prodigies. And so he took his daughter, and they spent time learning to play chess. Now, Laszlo was only an average chess player. But by playing with his daughter on a regular basis, he started going and getting books and delving into the interests and getting better and teaching his daughter. And then the other kids that started to be born wanted to know what the father and daughter were doing. The other two girls wanted to know what their big sister was doing in the room with their dad all the time. So they got interested and they wanted to be a part of it. So they get in and they start playing, and everybody's playing chess, and the girls are playing against each other. These girls, all three of them, became chess prodigies. One of the girls, Judith, gave a TED Talk. Judith Polgar, look her up. She said when she was a little girl, she remembers being at a park where there were 15 chess tables set up with grown men sitting at every chess table, and there she was, a little girl, simultaneously playing 15 games of chess. She would just walk down the line, make a move, make a move, make a move, until she beat everybody. She beat all 15 people simultaneously, and she was a child. She was a chess prodigy. All of them went on to become chess champions. Two of them, I think, grandmasters. Or I don't know if all of them. And then two of them became the best female chess players in the world. It was unbelievable. But wait a second. Where did that gift come from? They know who they are. They know what their gift is. But where did it come from? It came from the time they spent developing an interest. That is all. They were not born with any special chess ability. Laszlo didn't even know what he was going to teach them, but he knew they were going to be geniuses. Do you understand? You can choose what area you're going to be a genius in by selecting an interest and putting in the 10,000 hours. You put 10,000 hours into something, you're going to be a genius in that area of discipline. And you're not going to have any question of who you are or what your gifts are. So make a choice. You are whoever you say you are, whoever you choose to be. So make a choice every day to actualize, to become complete within yourself, and to work towards a goal of who you want to be, and continually upgrading to be the highest version, the highest quality version of yourself. You are born as one of a kind. There is not another human being who is exactly the same as you. There has never been another human being who is exactly the same as you. And you are born in a specific geographic location at a specific time on the timeline of humanity that is unique. So you are unique. Your place and time is unique. So therefore you are able to bring something to this world that no one else can bring. There is something you are able to do that no one else can do. You are the only one. You're a snowflake. You're one of a kind. It is your job, it is your duty to discover whatever it is that's unique about you by making the choice to choose something that you will do, what you will contribute to mankind. Because if every person on earth was utilizing their gifts, was developing their talents, was reaching their potential in a benevolent way to their fellow man, we would live in a utopia. Reach out towards your gifts. You make the decision of who you want to be. Decide it. Do it. Become it so we can all see it. Because you are one of a kind. You are a force of nature. And no one has as much of an influence over what your destiny will be as you do.